For a luxury car, customer service experience is more than just the quality of the product or the service, and it's more than the high price tag. To the customer, it's about feeling at ease, knowing that his dream car is in good hands. It's about assuring the customer that they can rely on us to provide them a luxurious experience. And we think that technology can play a crucial role here. Good morning. We are from the University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, and we will present our solution today on how Porsche can secure the customer's journey to provide a better service befitting of their luxury brand. Porsche is one of the world's leading luxury car brands. The company saw an 11% increase in sales in 2021, and China has been their single largest market since 2015. The car company has 138 dealerships across Greater China, which are known as Porsche centers. With strategic emphasis on the value of customer centricity, Porsche has established a dedicated customer relations function in China in 2018 so that they can implement more effective customer relationship management and meet personalized needs. Porsche has around 7 models of cars, and the Taycan, which is their newest luxury line and also their first EV or electric vehicle line, has experienced the most growth. The electric vehicle category of cars saw a boom in sales globally, even amidst the pandemic. And the Porsche Taycan has reaped the benefits of this wave. The Taycan saw a 106% year-on-year growth in sales in 2021, just 2 years after its launch. China has the 4th strongest demand for Taycans in the world, and there is a dedicated global community of over 3,000 members for this car. However, this luxury line of cars has a lead time of 3 to 6 months from the date of order to the date of delivery. Porsche's benchmark performance in China helps us gain a perspective of where the company is actually lagging behind. Overall, the Appeal study shows that the Porsche is the #1 luxury car brand when it comes to buyers' emotional attachment and level of excitement. And although not the best, Porsche has still been keeping up with other luxury brands when it comes to sales satisfaction. However, I would like you to focus on Porsche's performance when it comes to their dealer attitude. The company is ranked 10th in China behind 9 Asian auto brands. This goes to show that Porsche lags behind when it comes to maintaining good relationships with its dealers. And it also hints at a possible cultural barrier that prevents Porsche, which is a European brand, from excelling in this category in China. Now let us talk about the journey of Paul, one of Porsche's customers who was very excited about getting his dream car and whose customer experience got progressively worse. Paul fell in love with the Taycan after test driving it, and as an enthusiast, he was very conscious about the specifications he wanted in his car. He changed the options to be built into his car a couple of times because he really wanted them. But after a grueling wait time of more than 6 months, Paul felt cheated when he saw that his dream car didn't come with the changed specifications. On top of that, he had signed an empty customer satisfaction form, which the dealer who provided him with an atrocious service can fill up as he pleases. So we can see that Porsche's ordering process consists of 3 stakeholders: the customer, the dealership, and the company itself. From step 1, which is where customers place the order for their car, all the way down to step 4, which is when the customer receives their car. The dealership acts as the intermediary between Porsche and the customer at all steps. Here in the box on the top, we can see that the customer researches, contacts the dealer, and test drives the car before buying. And when they're spending so much money on their dream car, they would want to customize it. Think about their customization choices over and over again in their heads and request modifications. We can categorize this part as the pre-purchase behavior of the customers. And after the customer has confirmed everything, it is up to the dealer to communicate the purchase or any changes to the company or take updates so they can answer the customer's queries. During this time, customers can be overcome with excitement, ask for repeated updates and assurances, or even feel post-purchase cognitive dissonance. We can categorize this part as the post-purchase behavior. Now, my teammate Afran will address the pain points in the system.
Now, from Paul's customer journey, we have identified exactly 5 pain points. Firstly, although the company specifies in how many days you can bring modifications, there are still confusions between the dealer and the customer. Secondly, since there is a lead time associated, a customer feels the constant urge to update the status, to know the status. Thirdly, repeated contacting with the dealer is itself a hassle. Fourthly, due to a model with intermediation of dealers, it takes time to respond. And finally, if there are issues, the customer might want repeated reassurances. To provide a little bit structure to these identified pain points, the three issues that we have identified are high dependence on impression on dealership, meaning if the dealer creates a wrong impression, that impression will be on Porsche. The second one is the lack of initiatives to improve customer satisfaction during lead time. Customer keeps on waiting and a dissonance is created. And finally, if there are slight gaps in communication between Porsche and with the dealership, to bring it slight gaps in communication between Porsche and the dealership. To bring it all in one sentence, there is a lack of traceable and satisfactory purchase experience. To solve these problems, we identified three alternatives. The first one, what if we replace all the dealerships with experience centers? The concept of experience center is that instead of dealers, Porsche would have their own centers where customers can come in and take test drives. If they like it, they can place an order online anytime. Although this will improve our control over the system, it is expensive and it will remove the dedicated service and humanizing factor from the sales experience, which are important for a luxury brand like Porsche. The second alternative is digitizing and securing customer journey. The idea here is that the important nodes in the customer journey would be digitized in such a way that customers have a clear idea about how their order is being processed. Using technology will help bring more transparency to the process and reduce mistakes as well. It can also enhance the customer journey and increase satisfaction. And finally, the third alternative is to introduce specialized dealer monitoring units. These units would be dedicated to ensure that the dealers are complying properly with service quality. Now, this might sound intuitive and easier to implement and improve quality control, but this does not automate the process. As a result, 100% reduction in mistakes will not be possible. At the same time, there might be scope of higher dissatisfaction among dealers too, since they are independent and not employees of the company. The alternative that we have picked is digitizing and securing customer journeys. We believe that customer journey is at the core of any modern day service, especially the fact that we operate in a luxury industry reiterates the importance of providing the best possible customer experience. In order to provide a seamless journey, there is no alternative to developing a foolproof method. And what better alternative is there to using modern technology? However, only introducing some technology is not going to be enough, and what we will require is a proper execution plan that drives value across all stakeholders of the business. Our big idea is your Porsche journey starts now. Dear judges, the factor that we want you to focus here is whenever someone gives a Porsche, goes to a Porsche store and signs a document to purchase that Porsche, that person's journey with that Porsche will start from then and there, not 2 or 3 months later or 6 months later. We want to provide the same experience that the individual will have when he or she rides that Porsche through our services. This person might be a car enthusiast. This person might be just another guy buying just another car and have not much knowledge about Porsche. Regardless of that, our objective is to provide an experience like never before. Now, I would like to introduce my teammate Shadat Tajwar to go into the details of our plan.
To continue, to implement the big idea and deal with the issues addressed before, we have divided the action plan into 3 stages. Firstly, implementation of blockchain. Secondly, introduction of the My Porsche tracker. And lastly, resort to internal marketing to fix some other stuff. Moving into the first phase of the action plan, we look to implement blockchain technology in the process. Firstly, we develop and deploy the blockchain technology. We'll pilot the entire project among efficient and high-performing dealerships. This will help us test the technology out and check for any process loopholes that might need working. After fine-tuning the technology, we'll extend this across all dealerships. But before we go any further, it is important to look at how this blockchain technology would essentially work and how it would affect us. Here, if you observe carefully, you can see the parts marked black indicate a new order being placed or a change in specification being requested at the dealership, something that Paul had a bad experience with, right? The portion marked in blue shows how the dealership then forwards the order or change to the Porsche factory. The factory is marked in green, As you can see, the factory then commits to the blockchain from which all components have viewing access. Different nodes in the blockchain will have different levels of accessibility into the system. This goes on to solve the problems regarding the gap in communication between the factory and dealership, because now in the blockchain system, everything is so central, it requires access and it requires monitoring from each end. Moving into the next slide, the impacts this step has include reducing management based oversight with an added transparency in the progress. This additionally makes the flow of work far more convenient. In the next phase of the action plan, we introduce the My Porsche tracker. We will develop the tracker, beta test it, and then integrate it with our website. Upon integration and checks, we will roll out the tracker globally. If we take a closer look at how the tracker will work, we can observe the workflow of the tracker's utility and process. In short, after order confirmation and a customer is logging into their account, an order tracking dashboard becomes available. This dashboard, when clicked, displays information on different parts and augmented parts along with the progress of manufacturing. Along with this, the estimated time of delivery and the current status will also be displayed. This tracker will be integrated with the blockchain technology and display approved specification changes if a client makes any after freezing the deadline. The way they see the changes are in a 3D model of the Porsche Taycan. Sorry for the really sketchy drawing, but in reality, this will actually have a 3D model of the Porsche Taycan, which will highlight portions that have been completed. For example, upon successful installation of the windshield, it will highlight the windshield in a model. This helps deal with a few things. It helps build anticipation and increases visibility further. But the most important impact it has is that it helps with customers' post-order dissonance as customers get a view of the exact progress. This will help deal with their anxiety and constant contact with their dealerships that they tend to make after they purchase, right? Moving on to the next slide. This is where I bring in one of the slides that my teammate has already mentioned before, because it is imperative to set the context before I move into the next phase of our action plan. So, as you remember, in the benchmark insights, the clear red flag was that inside China, Porsche is currently 10th in terms of a dealer attitude study, which means there's a gap between the company and the dealership. Next slide. To fix that portion, in the next phase of the action plan, what we plan to do is go on with a process of internal marketing, right? We will implement a dealership scorecard system, which essentially prioritizes or lists down dealers according to different factors and according to their own performances. At the end of each year, we want to give out a top 5 dealership award. With this award, these dealerships will get special sales commission. At the end of each month, we also plan to give out a Salesman of the Month award across all the dealerships. And at the end of the year, we also want to give Dealership of the Year award. This exactly has 2 impacts and is very important, right? Firstly, it increases the sense of association with the company among the dealerships, since there was a gap, and these HR augmented things help bridge the gap between the dealerships and the company itself. But secondarily, it also incentivizes the dealerships to maintain the SOP and ensure service delivery, as they know there are added incentives to doing so, right? If we get a better look into the process of how this would work, next slide. Yeah, this is what potentially the dealership scorecards would look like, with each of the factors on the top and the dealers on the bottom. These factors will have different weightages given the importance of the factor, and after that we'll prioritize the dealers and then move on with our plans. Now my teammate Aswad will continue finishing up this presentation.
So in order to evaluate the effectiveness and the trade-offs of our action plan, we have created a risk matrix with the impact of the occurrence on one axis and the probability of occurring on the other. In the new action plan, customer dissatisfaction has the lowest probability, while operational lapses poor dealer reception has moderate possibility and impact. So if you can look at all of these points, we can understand as to where we can focus on and which risk has the most probability, and then take steps according to it. The steps of the action plan are spread out throughout 2 years, where we develop the blockchain solution in the first quarter and then go for piloting in the second quarter, and then move on to introducing the My Porsche tracker and the dealership scorecard. In order to track the performance of the action plan, we are going to look at KPIs like the number of complaints received, the post-purchase experience score, the dealership satisfaction score, and the percentage of customers using the My Porsche tracker and how long they're using it, and how much traffic that we're actually getting upon the introduction of My Porsche tracker. The most important part of a service recovery is that the process is an entirely continuous developing process, where we have to keep enhancing in order to reach a strategy that is best fit for the customer experience. For this, we will follow the three-step model to ensure we monitor the action plan through customer surveys and feedback, then evaluate the problems on the basis of Pareto analysis and find the root causes of most of the complaints. And finally, reiterate and update the process by incorporating this feedback. This continuously developing service recovery process is of utmost importance to reach effectiveness of the plan. To summarize, our action plan solves the traceability issue by introducing the blockchain technology and addresses the repeated post-purchase dissonance by giving the customer a touch point that is 24/7 available and gives them the necessary information at any time of the day in order to address the post-purchase anxiety that these people go through. The plan also creates cohesion among the dealers through internal marketing and motivates their performance through the introduction of dealer scorecards and several awards that we'll be giving to these dealers. We believe that even though service recovery is a continuously developing process, our action plan can be a very effective point to start from. That was all from Team Bangladesh. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, let me go with the first question. Sorry. I think you did mention in your presentation about the experience center, right? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just about to say, let's bring up the timer, but now it's ready. Yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry, you did mention something about experience center. Can you bring that slide up, please? Okay, so you know what? I think it's a good idea. I mean, from the face of it, right? But first of all, I'm not so clear. What are you proposing here? One, right? And two, I don't actually see it in the implementation plan. And why is that?
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, dear Judge, for your question. So initially, we identified three alternatives. So before we actually went on with our plan, we were thinking about what are the possible courses of action that we can take in order to actually improve the customer journey. So the three alternatives that we came with, the first of it was that we can replace these dealerships with experience centers. Now, we didn't choose this alternative. This is because in case of experience centers, the customers can come and take the cars for a test drive, and they can place an order online at any time. However, we think that in such cases, since Porsche themselves will be operating these dealership experience centers, it will be number one, a budget. It could create some budget issues. Number two, since there will be because of the online ordering modality, there would be a lack of human touch point. We think it doesn't necessarily go with Porsche's luxury image. We think that specific amount of human interaction needs to be present in order to actually ensure that luxury experience. And number three, it would be difficult for Porsche to offer any post-purchase services from just experience centers. And that is why we think that dealerships are not actually replaceable. And we have continued to go with them in our action plan.
So just to summarize, sir, since we evaluated the three alternatives, we didn't end up picking all three of the alternatives. We just picked, we just chose the alternative which was digitizing and securing customer journey. The other two alternatives, one with the experience center, the other with specialized dealer monitoring units, were the alternatives that we chose to skip because we felt like the cons did outweigh the pros to an extent, and as explained by my teammate Salman.
Okay, all right, okay, got it. And speaking about digitizing, okay, do you really think blockchain can solve communication problem?
Sorry, if I may answer that. We do feel like this is the most foolproof approach to solving the communication problem, because in this blockchain, given the fact that there needs to be approval directly from the factory, it means that it addresses the issue at the very base, because unless the factory approves of something, this does not get updated in the blockchain, which means anytime a customer who has viewership access to the blockchain system goes into the system and checks if the specifications were taken into order, if they go on and see that the specification change hasn't been approved by the factory, they can just call the dealership again and ask them about updates regarding the specification changes, which means that this is one way of bypassing all sorts of miscommunication that might happen through human error, and directly gives full ownership to technology, which we feel is the best approach to avoid this problem as a whole.
Okay, but you can just need some sort of system with a blockchain, right? Something that is used by dealer and customer and Porsche AG to communicate, right? It's just some sort of IT system, some sort of apps or anything like that. Why it has to be blockchain? What's the benefit that blockchain bring into this communication?
So let me answer to that. There are specifically two portions here, right? The back-end operations and the front-end operations. The front-end being the one between the customer and the dealer, and the back-end being the one with the Porsche and the dealers. So basically, if we introduce blockchain in this whole process, it adds immutability to information, right? When we looked at the case of John, the dealers were telling that the specifications will be made. Porsche did not know about it. And in the later stages, dealers said that they were not going to introduce the specifications to the John's cars. So when we introduce a decentralized system like blockchain into the whole process, firstly, my data will become immutable. So the dealers cannot say one thing at one point and change his opinion or her opinion at the very next time. So the data will not be changed throughout the whole process. And since it's a private blockchain, Porsche will have better control over the whole system as well. If we introduce another technology, like let's say a simple database monitoring system or just another app, what will happen in this process is the dealer will still have the option of suggesting that they have changed this thing and then change back to another thing, and this will create dissonance amongst the users as well, and there will be a gap in communication amongst all three parties.
And okay, then speaking about blockchain, what's the cost? What is estimated cost? Have you ever thought about it?
Okay, so sir, before we go into the cost, let me give a little bit more details about the blockchain technology that we want to introduce. So we want to introduce a private blockchain, right? So in China, there are about 150 dealers of Porsche. So we will have about 150 nodes here and a few more nodes from our factory or the management side as well. The user and the dealers in this case will only have viewing access, and Porsche, the company itself, will have the ability to commit the information to the blockchain. And there will be local databases in terms of the dealers on the side of the dealer side as well as the Porsche side. Now coming to the cost breakdown of it, although we have not exactly forecasted the amount of cost that we will be incurring, to give you a better idea about what we have thought about in terms of the cost. So Porsche already has a system of going through the workflow process in the organization, and they have a local database to maintain it. So the only part that we need to integrate is integrate that local database to the blockchain. In terms of the dealers, we will also introduce the local database to have that to store that specific information. Blockchain only comes in this whole process for the integration part. So we expect that the costs of the service failures that we have already seen, where the company had to give up 10,000, 8,000 HKU, is still in the long term. Blockchain is more efficient in this whole process, as we will not have to incurring these whole costs, and these are one-time blockchain cost followed by some maintenance cost. And in terms of also the relative costing, the alternatives that we had, if we were to introduce experience centers or the other technologies, it will still cost us more than this whole process, and the amount of customer satisfaction that we will gain will outweigh the costs of the initial cost that we will incur.
I just want to add one point. So our philosophy here is that good customer service costs less than bad customer service. And we think that if we use blockchain, and since there are only 138 dealers within China, we think that the costs and the benefits will far outweigh the costs, will give far benefits than the costs that were associated with negative customer experience. Thank you.
All right, over to you, Samir.
No, I think you covered most of the questions. I just have one. So over this whole solution that you processed, is there any particular steps that needs to be improved to the obvious supply chain issues at Porsche's end? Because obviously the lead time that they're mentioning is not up to quite up to the customer's expectations or the requirement.
Sir, to answer to that, we think that like changing the supply chain or of how Porsche factories work were beyond what we could suggest, given the fact that these Porsche factories have been working over and over again, which meant that there were other factors, if dealt with, would automatically deal with a lot of consumer anxiety or the consumer issues that were in hand. So the problem that we had identified and which was reflected through Paul's journey as well wasn't the fact that there is a great lead time of like 3 to 6 months of his Porsche coming, but it was more like there was a lack of information that was being transferred between Porsche, the dealership, and him, which means that if we do take out that bit of miscommunication or bridge the gap there, it essentially solves a lot of the post-purchase behavior or anxiety that these consumers might feel. Hence, we had focused on different steps that deal with the customer's side of things, much rather than tinker with Porsche's back end of producing the Porsche Taycan, because we feel it, yeah,
understood.
So capitalizing on that, sir.
No further questions from me.
Okay, all right. Then I have a couple more questions. You did mention about the what is it? The second option that you show here, the dealership satisfaction survey, right? That Porsche is actually performing poorly. What do you think is the root cause?
Sir, so what we feel, sir, could you please just rephrase the sentence at the last? Like we understood till like the dealer attitude study, but
yeah, what do you think is the root cause of this problem, of this low score?
Yeah. So in terms of root cause, what we felt was largely because the other companies were Asian, it automatically meant that it was easily more like culturally more adaptable for China and the Chinese market. And they knew that there were like plans of communication that they were successful in establishing between the dealerships and the company. Porsche as a brand from Europe, they couldn't really bridge the gap between these dealership and China because there were cultural differences. So as a result of which, among the dealerships, there was a sense of dissociation from Porsche as a whole. If you are a luxury brand and if you're heavily dependent on the 150 dealerships across Greater China, it automatically meant you had to do something or you had to go the extra mile to go and establish the fact that these dealerships and the company is synonymous. We felt there was a lack of affirmative action taken on that end. And that is specifically why in the third phase of our action plan, we try to capitalize on the fact and gave a few examples of what this internal marketing could potentially look like, as a result of which, as soon as you start recognizing these dealerships for what they do and start incentivizing them slightly more, it automatically means that this gap that existed between the dealerships of thinking that they're not part of greater Porsche kind of decreases to an extent, because now they feel like they're more part of the company and that these two things are interconnected.
But don't you think all these action not is well? Let me rephrase it. I don't think all this action is going to work, right? Because if you look at the whole scheme of things, right? Basically, your reward for dealership of the year, salesman of the month is not going to materialize if these people don't have car to sell. And the problem that they are facing right now is Porsche is not supplying enough cars, right? So basically, I don't think this gonna work, right? So basically, I mean, when you look at this kind of score, I think you need to be able to look at both sides, right?
Yeah, Shadab, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So, sir, what we feel, and like quite respectful, that is a very great insight, which is true to an extent, but there are data that do not quite affirm it to an extent, because end of the day, what we see is China still being the highest ordering like region for Porsche as a whole, which means that they were successful in selling like the maximum number of Porsche units in the region in comparison to any other place across the
I think
globe.
that's fine, but they could have sold maybe another 100,000 units more if Porsche could actually supply the car.
Sir, if I may intervene here a bit, in case. So basically, for luxury cars, the idea here is that if I want my dream Porsche, I would want it to be exactly like I envision it. And that's why I would want to customize it. And who better can do that than Porsche themselves? That's why they roll out those customizations and the car in its its glorious shape, according to my vision of my dream car from their factories. And that is why they cannot supply it the exact moment I want. And this is something that the customer also is aware of, because Porsche, as a global luxury brand, they follow the same modality across all their channels. And to an extent, this aspect of having to wait for my dream car actually feeds into the notion that yes, Porsche truly is a luxurious brand. It truly is crafting a luxurious experience for me. And that's why we think that Porsche is able to charge that high price tag. And that's why we think that we cannot exactly touch on that supply chain aspect, but what we can do is improve the customer journey so that when they ordered their dream car, they feel much more at ease, they feel much more luxurious, and that they can still continue thinking that Porsche is one of the best luxurious car brands in the world. Thank you.
Before taking all the questions, for the raising those challenging questions, quite tough. Thank you all. The judges, please stay in the room for the deliberation. And the dear team, we will place you in the waiting room for the feedback session in around 8 minutes.